all been very patient, and most people have just waited here, so we'll resume shortly. And do you have questions for John?
Well, there's something we can do as a community. Catholic Church is always building something. 77 parishes, how many of them have building projects going at any one time? All the earthquake remediation that the Archbishop has decreed that we should undertake. I personally think at both the Archdiocesan level and the parochial level, we should be embracing the principles of sustainability in the construction that we do, and let it be known that we're doing that. Should be setting an example. I could tell you a couple of stories where it hasn't happened, but we should be positive and look forward.
No, that's excellent. I do know, like, especially Rosemary Heights has, the retreat center has a very good sustainability policy. Also not only sustainability, but in terms of using fairly traded products. And I think they said next, because we're having our regional meeting there in 2015, that they also hope to have fairly traded meat products too. I've never heard of that one yet, but that will be a first. So there again, those are choices we always make. As a Catholic community, we need to apply our own Catholic teachings and make the right choices.
Anyone else? While you're thinking, I find it sometimes very difficult to balance some of these things. Like my dad was a scientist with the Department of Agriculture for many years, and so he shows pictures of the time of crop yields in the West, pre-fertilizer, compared to after they started to use fertilizer, and it's clear that the crops were a lot healthier and providing much greater yield. So, I totally appreciate that farming practices have changed and that there's many more natural ways of increasing crop yields and things like that now. But when it comes to sort of a simple trade-off between, the pollution contribution of fertilizers relative to the needs of the world for world hunger, to sustain world hunger, then I think it's rather difficult to find balance.
Yeah, it is difficult. We get this comment often around genetically modified organisms, GMOs. Again, the claim is increased productivity, using especially GMOs that are pest resistant, to increase productivity due to losses from pest damage. The reality is, when they've actually studied that, I know Guelph University has a wonderful agriculture department, probably best in Canada, has studied that and has found that to not be true, especially with the starling corn, that yes, it is pest resistant, but the productivity is actually much lower than native varieties. I can tell you from my experience in Latin America, a country like Mexico, until last year was genetically modified corn was not allowed for import for planting. Genetically modified corn was allowed for import for feed and food. So people being seed preservers or seed takers, that they preserve part of their crop for planting next year. People used up their native variety of seed, and instead of preserving, because there was corn in the market, they bought that corn, they planted it. Now this was, I don't know up-to-date figures, but about 10 years ago, about 60% of the Mexican corn had been contaminated with genetically modified corn, and over 30% of the yields had dropped. Now, again, it's because you really have to, you can't just take a broad statement and say genetically modified corn is not going to provide yields. someplace that actually might provide a decent yield. But when you're dealing with seed that has been, all seed is genetically modified. It's done through traditional means of selecting the seed from the plants that produce the best. So over and over and over. So you got 400 years of growing corn in one area of that seed. That seed is going to produce very well compared to a seed that is designed for, say, the Texan Panhandle. So it's difficult, but even in the Fraser Valley, I see farmers not dumping on so much in terms of chemical fertilizers now. They're using, because they have lost so much in terms of organic matter in the soil, that they realize they need to get organic matter back into their fields again. And the climate here, the prairie climate, when we started using organic fertilizers, that was after what happened? The great drought where we had the land basically blow away. The only way you can get stuff to grow in that type of land that has no organic matter on it, because it's been all blown off, is chemical fertilizers. But it's not sustainable in the long run. So it's never just, oh, here's the answer, just do this. You have to really study it. But you, as Catholics, I mean, we have to study the science, but as Catholics, we have to say, okay, what is the end impact? We have to look not just to the harvest. We don't have to look just to the next quarter. We have to look to the future generations. Yes?
So this is a serious moral issue. Sounds like we're agreeing on that. But in the life of the regular Catholic, it's not really something that we tend to hear about so much compared with other moral issues, which are also important, things like abortion and family life and so on. Why do you think that in the life of the typical Catholic we don't hear so much about this very serious moral issue?
Oh boy, I don't pretend to speak for the church in that regard. I think there depends what parish you're in, depends on your pastor. I've heard pastors talk about these issues lots in certain places. Definitely in the United States, if you go to parishes in the Midwest of the United States, they actually talk about the land a lot. And these issues, and it does impact people. These issues, maybe it doesn't get transmitted down from the bishop to the pastors to the parish. I think that often is when you're getting something in terms of information at the parish, you're coming to church to celebrate the Eucharist, so you're listening to the readings, and you get, again, most people don't like anything more than a 5 to 10 minute homily. So what can you get in 5 to 10 minutes is not an awful lot, but there are places where you do get it. But what it does call for, and again, we can't always just say, oh, my pastor doesn't do this or my bishop doesn't do this. If you really believe that the church is a community of believers, we all are responsible. We all are responsible. And one of the ways to dealing with this is lay formation, adult formation. That's what this series is about. So learning more and teaching each other. And inviting your pastors out to it. I did one workshop a number of years ago on the social teachings of the church. And I had 3 younger priests arrive that came to the workshop. And they said, all 3 of them said, we went through the seminary and we did not hear any of this. And it's true. I talked with a nun that was teaching moral theology in Scarborough at the seminary there. And she says we spend very, very little time on this aspect. The church in terms of teaching the priests. But I can tell you something, that the Vatican, the Pope, and our bishops spend actually quite a bit of time on this. Even our own Archbishop, there's some very, very good writings, very clear and specifics. The homily that he did to business leaders, what was it, 2 years ago? Very, very specific about all these moral theological issues on how business leaders need to be driving forces in their communities, in our faith communities, but in the communities, to show the lived life of the church, of our faith. So Yes, pastors are only people too. Some may not think this as much a concern, but what I say to people, and I'll say it to the pastors as well, all of those principles, it's not an either or. There's not either or. We're going to talk about the dignity of the human person, and we're not going to talk about the common good. You can't do one or the other. You have to do it all. And I think probably some of you have heard of the seamless garment movement came out in New York. The whole concept of the seamless garment movement is all social justice, all aspects of social justice, social teachings of the church are one seamless garment. We cannot opt out of it.
As an individual, not much we can do, because this is not really a simple question, a simple solution, because for the last 20 years, the social economic has changed. I used to working in the local greenhouse farm. Yeah. You know, every day I saw they throw away a lot of the what they call the secondary cars. They only pick the big and the good looking, but A cars to the big supermarket. And they have the secondary, and they to the local grocery shop, and about 40% is put in the waste.
That's horrible. I actually benefit from that because I live in Abbotsford, and I buy a lot of seconds. And it's true, there's nothing wrong with it. You're spending, what, $4 a pound for peppers in the supermarket here? If you go to a supermarket? I never paid more than $1.50 a pound for peppers. But because they're seconds. And there's some growers that I don't think they do it for any moral situation, but they realize there's value in that. So those peppers, those cucumbers, even the bread I buy what's called Seconds bread from Silver Hills. It's an organic bakery in Abbotsford. You know what the reason it's called Seconds? Because it's not 670 grams. It's 660 grams or 700 grams. Therefore, it can no longer be sold to the store. So before, what they used to do with that is what you said. That stuff would get thrown out. So you can do something. The worst thing to say is, I don't think we can do much about it. Because the first thing you can do is say, I want to buy that. Let me buy that from you. If you're working in a greenhouse, tell your boss, I want to buy that. Tell your boss that there's a market for it. There is a market.
But they want to control the profit. They want to control the profit.
Well, if they're a good business,
They put what they call the third class to the market. They will lower down the whole price.
no. But if they're a good business person, they'll realize that it's much more. They get more money by selling it as second than throwing it into the compost heap. So, that comment. I mean, you're not alone. So many people feel so overwhelmed by the complexity of it. And true, one person, we can't change it. But many people, even many people not even working together, but many individual acts can change things. You remember the time when there was no fair trade in the stores. You can remember the time that there was no organic product in the stores. People can change things with a very simple act of purchasing. People can change things by asking. The fair trade product, I remember when we started fair trade coffee, there was none of it was being in the stores. Now you cannot go into a store that doesn't sell fairly traded coffee and fairly traded chocolate. Almost every single one of them does. So the simplest act is buying responsibly. Be a responsible consumer. Simple acts that you can do throughout your day. Everything that we do has an impact on the environment. To say that I don't have any impact on the environment would be a lie. I mean, I drove here from the Fraser Valley, 150 kilometers round trip. I have an impact on the environment. So it's all about making choices and doing the best that we can with those choices.
Thank you.
The more I think of the way that we put development and peace together, the more I feel fascinated by it. You know, how peace and development can go together, you know, side by side. And currently I work in a healthcare setting, and whenever the team, we come across ethical dilemma, we sit together, and different departments sit together, and to come up with a care planning. I want to put it just simply that way. So what I was thinking is that a way, in terms of how that communal setting and struggle with that ethical dilemma really promote the peace to the whole community and the team, and it may end up with really better care planning for the patient and resident. You know, we have that ethical framework developed by the Canadian Health Organization of Canada, right? So we use that, essentially that ethical framework. So we identify the problem, and we go through each one from the different department and share the feelings, and eventually we come up with a different care planning, right? Better. It's always better, and then it really promotes the peace to the whole team. So, and eventually it will attribute to development as well for the care planning. So I just want to make a comment on that.
Well, it's very true. I mean, development and peace might actually be, the name would be changed to be equity and peace, because what is going to cause the future wars is inequity and lack of access to the resources necessary for human life. So, big one, where we're already seeing conflicts around water and around food. Water and food. This is so basic. And when people without water and people without food, you immediately run into riots. So you need that. You need that to survive. It is a life issue.
Is more going to be done to have development and peace? Because I only found out about it this year. I've been a Catholic all my life, and I've been a member of the parish for 12 years, of this current parish. So what's going to be done to let people know about this organization? Because it's awesome.
The best thing to let people know about this organization, I'm surprised you don't know, because you actually do have a fairly active parish group here for the development piece. Again, I think probably the one issue with development and peace is we have essentially 2 campaigns where we're visible to the parish in the year. Share Land, and most people recognize Share Land. They don't even recognize the name Development and Peace, because Share Land is always the campaign 5 weeks during Lent. So you get a lot of development peace throughout Share Land. But I've had people that I've talked to, people that have been giving to the development peace since our first collection back in 69, I think, 1969. They never knew the organization called the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development Peace. They knew Share Land though. So a big part of it is, again, that one of the things that we're looking at as the Archdiocesan Council in the Vancouver Archdiocese is looking at is really promoting a model of not the Development Peace Committee, but the Parish Social Justice Committee. And I think that's where you will be able to not only educate yourselves better, but also to better educate the people in the parish. Because it's not just development piece. Development piece, we have a very specific mandate to educate on the root causes of poverty and underdevelopment in the Global South, and to enable Canadians to act in solidarity with them. So there's an education and action only in the parish twice a year, and it's on the Global South. You have here issues of social justice in your own communities outside the doors of the church. So really, and the Archbishop agrees with me. We've talked with him about it. In fact, we're doing a couple test cases to try and get it going. St. Mark's Corpus Christi has already agreed, and that was going to be the most complex because it includes all the campus ministries, the different Catholic groups on campus. So I thought if we could get everybody there to agree to give it a try, it should be easy in a parish like this, right? So that is something, when you have a parish group, a parish social justice committee, you are able to learn a lot more not only about development and peace, but about all the social justice issues that are within your immediate community and outside it, nationally and globally.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you very much. If people have more burning questions, I think we're getting a little late here. But thank you for the questions you have had, and if you have more, I think you can probably talk to John for a few more minutes. And I would like to thank you very much for this small presentation, for coming and sharing with us at the Catholic Forum tonight.
Thank you very much.
And inspiring us and telling us how to get more involved.
Thank you. So I left my business card there, and a few prayer cards and stuff, and a couple pamphlets if you want to take them away up in front. Thank you very much. And feel free to contact me via the business card. I do have a toll-free number, so I know it's long distance from Vancouver.
Can I have last comment? Talking about the bottled water, can we elevate this campaign to archdiocese level and encourage every single person to know more bottled water?
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. And I'm quite sure that Evelyn Violette, who's the Director of the Office of Justice and Service, has actually been talking about that. She is trying to encourage parishes to not only bottled water, but also with fairly traded products to the parish.
In my parish, every week I saw a asking